Council discusses with UN envoy Tim King peace efforts in the country. The United Nations Security Council holds a meeting on the situation in Yemen. Safer tanker salvage operation and release of UN staff can pave the way to peace in Yemen. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Roshan Fuad. Chairman of the Presidential Leadership Council, Rashad Al-Alimi, met in Riyadh today with the U.S. envoy, Tim King, and the U.S. ambassador to Yemen, Stephen Fagan. The meeting touched on developments in the Yemeni situation and efforts to revive the peace process in light of the stubbornness of the Houthi militia. The head of PLC was briefed by the American envoy on the results of his recent contacts and the options offered to push the Houthi militia to engage seriously for peace. Al-Alimi reaffirmed the commitment of the Council and the government to just peace and warned of the repercussions of collaboration between the Houthi militia and terrorist organizations. The UN Security Council held a meeting on Yemen today. The Council members heard a briefing from the UN envoy to Yemen, Hans Grunberg, on the results of his consultations to revive a comprehensive peace process. The Humanitarian Affairs Coordinator was another briefer who elaborated on the humanitarian situation in the country. The safe transfer of the crude oil from the safer tanker and the release of the UN staff may be a prelude to reaching a longer truce in Yemen. The following report gives more details.
This technically difficult maritime operation took years to organize and execute, and plans were frequently bogged down in political, diplomatic, and financial wrangling. Eventually, the international community, the Yemeni government, and the country's Houthi rebels agreed on a way forward and have managed to avert the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said could have been a monumental environmental and humanitarian catastrophe. There have been other encouraging signs of progress. This month, the UAE helped to secure the release of several United Nations staff members who were abducted in Yemen 18 months ago. The same day, the US Special Envoy Tim King arrived in the Gulf as part of efforts to help launch a comprehensive peace process in Yemen, the State Department said. These developments have taken place amid a period of relative calm in Yemen, but much more work remains to be done. The oil from the Safa is now on another vessel that a senior employee at the Yemeni oil said it was 15 years old and inefficient from a technical and financial standpoint. There is also $22 million funding gap to tow the Safa to a scrapyard. There is momentum building, and the considerable benefits to be gained from compromise and dialogue should be plain to see for all parties involved. It is time to build on these gains and begin to move forward from managing the conflict to bringing it to an end.
The government delegation announced that negotiations with the Houthi militia regarding opening roads and ties have reached a dead end. The head of the government delegation accused the group of using this humanitarian file as a means to achieve political and military gains. He renewed calls to the international community that there are millions of people trapped inside ties as a result of the Houthi blockade. The military media reported the government forces engaged in clashes with the Houthi militia in Hais, south of Hodeidah. He confirmed that the clashes lasted for about an hour with machine guns and medium weapons and ended with losses among the Iranian-backed militia. Dozens of terrorist Houthi militants were killed and wounded in an intensive shelling by the forces of the 5th Brigade in Lahj Governorate. Local sources said that the 5th Brigade launched focused strikes in response to the Houthi bombing, which resulted in the death and injury among them. The United Nations said that the war in Ukraine has affected many families in Yemen, as food prices have become unaffordable. Sources in Sana'a said that local residents have started pawning their personal belongings to get food in return. Such a new phenomenon indicates that humanitarian crisis in Yemen reached alarming levels. More on this story is within this report.
The deteriorating living conditions in Yemen, widespread hunger and poverty and lack of pay have forced thousands of Yemenis to resort to pawning household goods to pay for food and other basic needs. This came amid United Nations reports asserting that the deterioration of food security in Yemen will continue during August for the third month in a row. Yemen has been living in difficult and harsh humanitarian conditions for 9 years, imposed by the Houthi coup militia on the people. Residents in Sana'a and other Houthi-controlled cities speak about the spread of this phenomena. According to local sources, Yemenis deposit their personal belongings with merchants in return for obtaining goods or providing some basic services, as they have no alternative way to borrow money. When the person doesn't repay the loan during the redemption period, the pawnbroker can sell the deposited item to recover the cash. According to the Middle East newspaper, residents mainly pawn their watches, eyeglasses, personal and family cards, passports, mobile phones and arms. Merchants said residents on low incomes are resorting to pawning household goods to pay for food amid the dire economic conditions. Meanwhile, a recent report last week said that in June 2023, 38% of the surveyed households in Yemen experienced food insecurity equivalent to above acute malnutrition scale.
Coming next. The Houthis continue to tamper with the education system in the country. Welcome back. The terrorist Houthi militia approved a number of restrictions to renew the licenses of private schools. A document revealed that the rebel militia has introduced new measures that promote sectarian ideology to give the authorization for the private schools. Houthi restrictions required schools to appoint a supervisor nominated by the militia to check the implementation of sectarian activities. During the past 2 days, the Houthi militia backed by the Iranian regime distributed an Iranian edition of the Noble Quran containing a distorted interpretation. Residents of the capital Sana'a said the distribution of the version contains a distorted interpretation coincides with the sectarian occasion celebrated by the militia. Along the 8 years of conflict, the Iranian-backed militia has adopted a policy to distort the school curriculum and the Yemeni identity as a whole. The following report has more details.
The Houthi group has made many changes in the educational curricula by excluding the values of freedom, justice, and equality, and replacing them with ideological and sectarian ideas that promote a culture of terrorism, allegiance to the priesthood, and entrench the principle of slavery, the primacy of the dynasty, and guardianship over people. The militia is spreading its sectarian ideology, which does not believe in coexistence and does not accept the other. The group's alterations focused on the curricula in the primary education in the subjects of the Holy Quran, Islamic education, Arabic language, history, and national education, in order to get rid of the goals of the Yemeni September Revolution, and also include deleting lessons that talk about the Yemeni history, national holidays, and events, and replacing them with new lessons that talk about the history of the group and its wars, personalities, sectarian leaders, and other lessons that fuel conflicts and establish sectarian differences among Yemenis. Since the Houthi militia took control of the state, the educational institution has transformed from a public institution owned by the Yemeni people to a private institution owned by the priestly group, which forced the people to finance it, whether by converting the curriculum into a commodity that is sold to the students or by imposing what it calls societal contribution to finance its war. The changes that the Houthis are keen to make in the school curriculum are based on achieving two main goals. The first is to spread the group's sectarian ideology, and secondly, to bring about billions of cash. Private schools are required to buying the new curriculum in quantities that exceed the number of students registered with them, which indicate that the militia is making billions in profits. Observers consider the continuous changes made by the Houthis to the curriculum as a step towards dividing the Yemeni people culturally, politically, and scientifically, and establishing a sectarian ideology that targets the values of tolerance and coexistence. These Houthi policies reveal the extent of the dynastic group's disregard for the Yemeni people and its disrespect for the human dignity.
Angry demonstrations erupted in Aden to protest the deteriorating living conditions. Local sources reported that the demonstrators blocked the main street in Al Mualla district and set tires on fire in protest against the collapse of the electricity service and its interruption for 9 years. The Yemeni economy has suffered for years due to the conflict. This was reflected on the people nationwide. Thousands of families struggle to secure the basic necessities amid incredible high prices and collapse of the national currency. This report has more details.
A report by the World Bank on the Yemeni economy highlighted challenges faced by the country and opportunities for recovery and growth. The report showed that if Yemen attains a lasting peace agreement, there could be a large peace dividend for the Yemeni population, a 6 percentage point increase in GDP growth trajectory, which would result in a cumulative increase in real GDP by 1/3 over the next 5 years compared to the status quo. Even before the outbreak of the war, Yemen was a poor country with weak governance. The war exhausted Yemen's fragile economy, touching upon every aspect of life. The compounded shocks of the COVID-19 pandemic and rising global food and energy prices further deepened the economic and humanitarian crisis created by the war. According to the report, the conflict led to a contraction in real GDP by approximately 50%. The conflict has damaged or destroyed more than one-third of the country's homes, schools, hospitals, and water and sanitation facilities. While productivity indicators were already weak before the conflict, productivity plummeted as violence intensified. Oil production, which is crucial to the economy, was severely disrupted by the war and has undermined the government's ability to provide the population through the provision of basic services and affected public employment, as many civil servants have been paid only partially or not paid at all. According to the report, the hardships faced by the Yemeni people are immense, such as high inflation, poor job quality, and unstable public sector. Peace is a must to enable inclusive growth, foster sustainable development, and above all, improve the living conditions for the Yemeni people.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. Head of Presidential Council discusses with U.S. envoy Tim King peace efforts in the country. The United Nations Security Council holds a meeting on the situation in Yemen today. Safer tanker salvage operation and release of UN staff can pave the way to peace in Yemen. This is the end of the news. It was Roshan Fouad. Thank you for watching.